There is something chilling about a murder that happens behind closed doors, inside the supposed safety of a family home. These are places where children are meant to feel protected, where laughter echoes down hallways and where the outside world is kept at bay. But history tells us a different story. The horrific case of Chris Watts, a man who took the lives of his pregnant wife and 2 daughters, hiding the bodies in oil tanks. And in Kilmarsh, Derbyshire, Damien Bendel butchered his partner, her 2 children and a visiting friend, all within the walls of their family home. What connects these murders isn't just brutality, it's betrayal, a sanctuary turned slaughterhouse. And then there's Egerton, just on the outskirts of Bolton in 1998, and the murders of Celeste Bates and her 2 children, Daniel and Milo. But who killed them? Someone she knew, someone she feared, and someone who would later share a prison cell with Britain's most infamous serial killer, Dr. Harold Shipman. In the quiet, unassuming village of Egerton, nestled on the outskirts of Bolton and beneath the rooftops of a modest row of terraced houses, a crime of such savagery was committed that even seasoned detectives would be left reeling in disbelief. What unfolded behind the closed doors of 505 Blackburn Road on the 8th of September 1998 was not just a tragedy, but an act of brutality so unfathomable it would forever alter the lives of those left behind and haunt the officers who discovered it. It was in the early hours of a cold September morning in 1998. Greater Manchester Police were on the hunt. Their target was a man named Peter Christopher Hall, aged 34, a heating engineer from Moss Shaw Way in Radcliffe. Now, hours before his arrest, the Greater Manchester Police helicopter was making several sweeps over Radcliffe's Moss Shaw estate in a bid to locate the wanted man. And at 2:10 on September the 9th, a red Honda Civic that was being driven by Hall smashed into a telegraph pole after careering out of control on Totterton Road near its junction with Watling Street. Now, obviously it wasn't the crash, the road accident itself, that had made Peter Hall a wanted man, because only hours earlier the police had made the rare steps of publicly naming him in connection with the brutal slayings of Celeste Bates and her 2 children, Milo and Daniel. Celeste Bates was of Portuguese descent. She had been married twice and at the time of her death was separated from her second husband Ian, with whom she had a son named Milo. Now, Celeste and Ian had married at Gretna Green and moved to 505 Blackburn Road sometime around 1994-95, but the couple had separated during Christmas 1997. While separated, Ian had moved into some flats nearby, and he spent every single weekend looking after his 2 children. Now, when I say his 2 children, he had one with Celeste, and that was young Milo. Daniel was the son of Celeste, but from a previous marriage. But Daniel, from all accounts, didn't really have anything to do with his biological father. And he had only known Ian as his true father ever since, obviously, Ian met Celeste. Ian was, in all respects, you could say, the true father to Daniel. Now, as for Peter Christopher Hall, he was 34 years old, tall at 6 foot 1 inch, slimly built and short, neatly kept brown hair. And for over a decade, he had lived alone in a quiet corner of Moss Shaw Way, Radcliffe, sharing his home with 2 fiercely loyal Rottweilers. On the surface, Hall appeared to be just another self-employed heating engineer, quiet, private, and with no history of violence. But not long after Celeste's marriage to Ian began to fall apart, Hall drifted into her life. But what started as a casual acquaintance would soon spiral into something far more sinister. For weeks leading up to the murder of Celeste and her 2 sons, Celeste herself, from all accounts and from what neighbours would later confirm were true, she was struggling with deep anxiety. And she believed that somebody was trying to break into her home. Now, she reinforced her home with several locks. But this anxiety, they weren't without reason. And indeed, it would later emerge that the person who was trying to force his way into the family home was indeed that of Peter Hall. It was when a sister of Celeste had become increasingly concerned that she wasn't answering any telephone calls, that she phoned the police and asked them if they could just do a welfare check on Celeste. Now, when the police made their way to 505 Blackburn Road, obviously nobody came to answer the door. Now, there was a workman who was working on a nearby property, and the police asked if they could take a ladder, if they could borrow a ladder to make their way into one of the upper ground windows of the house. And in doing so, one police officer, he managed to open a window that was partially open as it already was. And this police officer made his way into, like I said, into the house of Celeste. But what he would quickly come across, it was truly horrific. The silence inside the house, from all accounts, was heavy, suffocating, and it was disturbed only by the creaking floorboards as the police stepped cautiously through the darkness. In the main bedroom lay the body of Celeste. She had been brutally beaten with an ornamental iron and stabbed at least 10 times with a serrated hunting knife. The violence had been excessive, deliberate, and her injuries were also showing signs of strangulation. This had not been an impulse outburst, it was rage, planned and personal. Now, the police officer continued making his way through the house, and he quickly came across the two bodies, the lifeless bodies of young Milo and Daniel, and they were both laying in their beds. Both had had their heads brutally beaten. And from all accounts, the scenes that this police officer and other police officers would soon encounter was so shocking and so barbaric in nature that many officers had to seek counselling long after, obviously, this case had been solved. It was after murdering Celeste that Hall dressed her body in clean clothes before returning to his home in Radcliffe. He showered and changed into clean clothes before returning to the home of Celeste, but this time in the taxi. He spoke to the taxi driver, saying how he was in a right good mood. Now, back at the family home, Hall took the red Honda Civic that belonged to Celeste, and he went to the nursery to pick up 17-month-old Milo. He drove Milo back to the home, and he beckoned the young boy into one of the bedrooms, where he would then proceed to hit him several times over the head. After murdering Milo, he then placed a towel over the dead boy's body. It was after the disposing of the body of Milo and placing him under a towel in his own bedroom that Hall left yet again. And this time he went to pick up 8-year-old Daniel from a childminder. He drove the young boy back to the family home, and he asked Daniel to go to his own bedroom, in which he did. Hall then made his way into the bedroom, where he then commenced to batter Daniel about the head, again several times, just as what he did in the case of young Milo. But Hall wasn't finished. He slashed furniture belonging to Ian Bates and went even further by killing a pet guinea pig which had been a gift to Daniel from his dad. Then for the next 2 hours, Hall lay beside Celeste's body. Now, if the murders themselves weren't horrific enough and sad as what they obviously were, what Hall went on to do was to place a note on the body of Celeste. And the note simply read, "You are welcome to your family back." Now, the note was interpreted by some as a twisted expression of control, or perhaps even a taunting final word aimed at Celeste's estranged husband, Ian. Now, after spending at least 2 hours laying alongside the lifeless body of Celeste, Hall got up and made his way across to the King William IV public house, which was literally a 2-second walk from the former home of Celeste Bates. It was on the corner opposite. And it was inside this public house that Hall would laugh and joke, not just with the barmaids and the other bar staff who were working that night. He was also cracking jokes and having a laugh with the punters and the regular people that visited that public house. The King Henry IV pub is the one just on the left-hand side now, with the former home of Celeste just opposite. I'm just coming into view now. So you can see just how close the pub itself was to the house. It's literally a stone's throw away. And that is where Peter Hall went straight after murdering those poor people in that house. This is how bullish Hall appeared that evening. And this is after the murder of 3 innocent people. People who trusted him the most. And yet he was acting in a normal, everyday kind of mood, laughing and joking, like nothing at all was bothering him. It seems that Hall was happy simply to chat to anybody and everybody that evening. But as he was leaving the pub, he delivered a chilling remark. "You'll never forget me," he said. "I'll be famous tomorrow." Celeste's former husband, Ian Bates, he was a former soldier and a philosophy graduate, and he had met Celeste through a dating agency during her time living in Darwin. Though their relationship had ended, he had remained in his children's lives, and after the murders, Ian made the heartbreaking decision to move back into the house where his family had been killed. Not because it brought comfort, but because it was the only place where he still felt connected to the life they once shared. He would later go on to say that he felt like he was drifting most of the time. "There's no healing, just coping. The pain is like a toothache, it never really leaves." Ian described Hall as an evil coward, a man whose face, he said, was pure evil, and the fury in his voice was justified. A 6'3" man had systematically, deliberately, and without mercy ended the lives of 2 children and their mother. All, he believed, because Celeste had decided to leave him. On Tuesday the 22nd of September 1998, the funeral of Celeste and her 2 young boys took place here in Egerton and very close to where the scene of these murders took place. And it's here in Christchurch where the bodies of those poor 3 victims now lay. As you can see, we found the final resting place of Celeste and her 2 children, Daniel and Milo. And on first viewing, as Vicky pointed out, I wouldn't say it looks neglected, because the grave itself and the topsoil does look like it has been cleaned. But there are no fresh flowers. There's nothing here to suggest people are coming here regular to pay their respects to this poor family, which is a shame considering this little village, Egerton itself, was rocked to the very core with what happened in the murders. I'd have expected maybe some locals to come and, well, to put flowers down maybe. But like Vicky's just said, they may do this maybe once a year on an anniversary of the deaths, maybe, possibly. We'll never know, but this is the final resting place regardless of, like I said, Celeste, Daniel and Milo. At Manchester Crown Court on March 19th, 1999, Peter Christopher Hall showed zero emotion as all the charges were read out. He pleaded guilty to all 3 murders. Prosecutors detailed a sequence of events that were almost beyond comprehension. But as for Hall and his defence team, he claimed the killings were part of a murder-suicide pact. His defence also said Hall had, since his arrest, tried to kill himself on at least 3 occasions. Even on the day of arrest, he would tell of how he had crashed the car he was driving on purpose in the hope of ending his life. However, and as we touched upon during the course of this video, the motive behind all of this tragedy was simply jealousy. Hall had become extremely bitter and angry towards Celeste, simply because he believed she was on the verge of going back, reconciling the marriage with her estranged husband Ian. Judge Mr. Justice Forbes, he didn't mince his words. He turned around and said, "You brutally destroyed 3 innocent lives. None of your victims had done you the slightest harm. Together they formed a decent, happy, loving family unit, and they fell victim to what appears to have been your jealous rage. No words of mine can truly express the feelings of horror and revulsion these dreadful and wicked crimes evoke." But the prison walls couldn't hold Peter Hall for long, and after being relocated from Strangeways in October 1998, he was transferred to Wakefield Prison, and it was in November 1999 when Hall would take his own life. Now, some people would say this was justice served, but yet others would say this was simply a coward's way out. Now, one strange quirk of fate, some people may argue, was that while he was in Strangeways prison, Hall had shared a cell with Dr. Harold Shipman. And as many people know, Dr. Harold Shipman has to be, if not is, the most prolific serial killer that the UK has ever known, if not the world. Harold Shipman is another story for another day, but he killed dozens upon dozens of innocent people, mainly elderly people. But Hall had shared a cell with Shipman for a short period of time while serving his sentence in Manchester's Strangeways prison. This disturbing detail only emerged during an inquest into Hall's death held in Wakefield. And when Hall was found dead in his cell at Wakefield's high security prison, prison staff also discovered letters addressed to Shipman, the man once dubbed Dr. Death. Now, the exact details of what was contained in those letters has never been fully made public. Hardly anybody knows what was written. Now, some clues and some hints at what may have been written have kind of sneaked out over the years. But like I said, because they've never been made public, it's hard to know if what I'm about to read is true or not. So please take this next bit with a pinch of salt. But I am going to read out just a couple of snippets. They do seem like they could be legitimate, but like I said, because they've never been publicly revealed, it is hard to know for sure. Now, what is believed to be known from the media reports and the inquest records is the following. Hall reached out to Harold Shipman for guidance while they were both incarcerated at Strangeways prison. And according to some reports at the time, Hall had admired Shipman's clinical detachment and saw him as a figure of control and finality. Now, at least one letter was found in Hall's cell after his suicide, and it referenced wanting to get it right the first time. Now, we believe this is a chilling indication that he wanted to ensure his suicide was successful. So like I say, the inquest into Hall's death, it would confirm the existence of these letters, but publicly, nobody is quite sure exactly what was written. In a statement following the death of Peter Christopher Hall, the West Yorkshire coroner, David Hinchcliffe, and Hall's brother, John, they claimed that Hall had received virtually no psychiatric treatment whilst behind bars, except from the man accused of murdering 15 of his own patients, Harold Shipman. Hall's brother, he would believe that Peter Hall, he wasn't an evil man, he was just sick. He was a sick man and he needed help. I'm not quite sure what people who are watching this video will make of that statement. I get family members will defend their brothers and their sisters, their mothers, their parents. I get that. But what Peter Hall did to Celeste and those 2 children during that awful September afternoon, it's beyond words. It's beyond comprehension. It really is. I do understand why family members will defend the actions of others. Like I said, I do get it. But I do find it hard, and it does kind of make you sick in the stomach that people out there will still defend what Hall did. Like I said to those innocent people, they didn't deserve what occurred to them. They didn't deserve any of it. They didn't deserve to have their lives ended in such a cruel and heartless, barbaric fashion. Hall and many other stories like this, these people have no rights whatsoever to take the lives of other people. Perhaps Peter Hall was sick. Perhaps he was suffering mentally. But on a personal level, and I suppose if it ever happened to me, I will never know. But on a personal level, I find it really, really difficult to understand how anybody, and I mean anybody, can defend his actions. So that is all from here in Christchurch. And if you've heard this horrific story before, comment down below. Here in England and the northwest of England, this story has been somewhat forgotten. But I said to Vicky whilst we arrived here at Christchurch that it still has all the hallmarks of those kind of stories that we have read about, such as the Amityville murders, such as the Chris Watt murders. So this is why we mentioned them at the very beginning. Like I said, here in the UK, this story, I believe, has been firmly forgotten. But tell us if you have heard anything or you do remember this being in the news. Now, going back to Peter Christopher Hall, we haven't spoken about his mental state at the time of the murders, and I think there's one reason behind that. I don't personally believe he was suffering in a way which should push somebody over the edge to do a murder such as this, murder of any kind. People may jump on the old, he had mental issues, mental health issues, but as Vicky's going to point out, she doesn't believe that either, do you?
No. Somebody who plans, going to the child sitters, going to school to collect children, knowing to put them straight in the rooms to do what he did. Obviously, then going and basically bragging about it in the pub.
Yeah. I mean, you'll hear about me tomorrow. I'm going to be famous.
Yeah, and leaving that awful note, that is just...
Placing the note on Celeste's body. But also, we have to remember, after killing Celeste, he clothed her in clean clothes. He then went home, he showered, changed, got in a taxi, bragged to the taxman of what a good mood he was in, went back to the house to collect her car, in which he used to collect the two children. He took them back to the house individually, killed them individually, and then he lay down next to Celeste's body for 2 hours after, before he went to the pub. This to me isn't a mind of somebody who has lost the plot completely, as in insanity. This is the mind of somebody who was cold, calculating, and as you were struggling with the word earlier, it was methodic, wasn't it, in everything he was doing.
And the fact that he then... this is pure obsession with that lady, with Celeste.
Yeah. Well, apparently, can I just interrupt you? Apparently, he said later to some people that he had never been in love as much as he was with Celeste. He had been on his own for 12 years, from all accounts. I should also point out that from what we have read, but there is very limited information on this next part, but Peter Hall does have 2 surviving children. So, obviously, we can't be too disrespectful, because obviously he does have young children himself. Well, there won't be young children now, but he does have children himself. So obviously we don't want to bring them into this, but he does have 2 surviving children.
I'm surprised he did what he did to the children.
Exactly, and this is what I was going to say, you see. So to take the lives of the other 2 children who may not have been his own, again, to me, it's just methodical in what he was doing, what he was planning.
To me, it was more a case of, especially like going and doing, we weren't sure if it was a hamster or guinea pig, because the dad had bought it for the child. Yeah. But to me, this is, if I'm not having you, you're not having her.
Yeah, and also, as Vicky just mentioned then, a pet. In the papers, it was said that he also went on to kill either a guinea pig or a pet hamster. It doesn't really matter what kind of pet it was, but not only had he killed the family, he also killed like I said, this pet. Now, to some people, they'll say, well, that's nothing in the grand scheme of things, which I agree, it probably isn't. But it also shows, and it does show his mindset at the time of these murders.
It's pure rage. It's against her because she didn't obviously want him anymore, and it's against him because he's blaming Ian.
Yeah.
Because of, like you say, the destruction of furniture and things like that.
Yeah.
But no matter what, it's just...
With this one, we don't really want to use the mental state excuse. And again, I don't think it was ever brought up in court at the time. I could be wrong. And like I said, if people know more to the story, comment down below. But yeah, it certainly isn't a horrific one.
But the mother's dead in her bed, and he goes and picks the children up, goes and kills them in their rooms, knowing the mum's dead. Oh.
Yeah, and then he sleeps next to the mum for 2 hours.
I think he got a bit of a kick out of it, actually.
Some will say so.
Yeah.
Some will say so.
Yeah.
But let us know your thoughts down below, everybody. It is an interesting case, and it is one that it shocked us, to be quite honest, when we did read about it. It is one we never knew about until at least 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, when we first came across it. But like I said, nothing is ever written about it. It is seemingly forgotten, unlike these other infamous cases around the world, such as the Amityville horror. And that is graphic. But this kind of reminded me of the DeFeo murders, at Amityville. It really did. But yet this one has gone under the radar. But if you have enjoyed this kind of content, we know it is a bit morbid, a bit dark. If you have enjoyed it, like I said, comment down below. Please share this video because it does help the channel grow. Also, give us a big thumbs up and also click that notification bell because we do bring out a video, all being well, each and every Monday evening at 7:05 UK time. But we're going to leave it here in Christchurch, do all those things, and we'll be back soon with more tales from a dark, but at times, glorious past. So stay safe, stay curious.